Set up to put the chain tensioner on here. So I put the wheel in with the sprocket so that we can get the chain line, and just propped it up nice and easy. We're going to use one of the Sammy Miller Universal Fit chain guards, and the first thing to do is make up a little mounting bracket for it, just a U piece. And this is one of those instances where you do need to take the thickness of the metal into account when you do your bend, because if you just mark this as 1 1/4, 3/4, 1 1/4, and then bend it, it's going to be nowhere near. If you get the bottom piece the right width, these are going to end up shorter, or if you get them the right length, the gap is going to be big enough. The important thing to remember is that the distance piece that's inside here is what the bracket clamps up on, and that piece is fractionally longer. You can see there's just a little movement there than the part that moves. That way it holds it on, that can move, we're going to grease it. So the first thing we need to do is get the chain line, and for that we're just going to get ourselves something which is reasonably straight. Oh, hold on, sounds like I've got a visitor. Come back to this in a moment. Right, back again. That was a friend of mine with a Harley. I still talk to him though. Alright, straight edge. So we want a nice straight edge which we clamp to the sprocket so that we know where the chain's going to be. Now what I've done is just taped a little spacer on the back of this so that I know I'm clear of the tyre. And now we can put this on and set it exactly where we want it, and it's in place for us to do the bronzing. Because as I've said before, the worst job is always holding things while you weld them. But this time we should be pretty good. The other thing about the spacer is it allows us to put it up nice and flat against there, keep everything parallel. We check to see that the block is good on the chain. As you can see, the inside of this would be the outside of the chain. So that's nice, it just gives us that little 1/8 of an inch in there. So we'll get this set up. I've got a leaky welding torch. Alright, I'll walk around the other side and we'll bronze it. Check from here that I'm happy about how straight it all is. One thing you have to be careful of if you're mounting it back here is the grease nipple. So there's just nicely enough room for the grease nipple there. And there we go. Now then, we're going to need a little bit of protection for the tyre. So let's see if we can just slip this old mudguard in there. There we go. tack it for the moment. Check to see that we still like where we are. Now we'll take the wheel out so we can weld this up or bronze this up safely without setting light to the tyre. Last thing that goes on the swinging arm is the prop stand, or kickstand as they call it here in the States. And you may notice that I went ahead and did this. To be quite honest, I completely forgot about filming it. So the first couple of prop stands I made, I used a system where you had a solid piece on here and the end of the prop stand was split so that it went like this. But then I rather like the one on the Montesas, which are done this way. So the last couple I did like this, and I found it to be very good. Basically, it's a piece of sheet which is bent up into this form here. You can see the curve. What you want is for the prop stand to have enough room to swing, and then to have a good bit of support here when the bike is standing there. Prop stand's just a piece of tube. I put a couple of little bends in it because it needs to be quite long and you don't want it to be too far out the way. This pivots exactly the same way as the chain tensioner does. There is a piece inside, and this piece again is a good tight fit inside the mounting, because the mounting is going to clamp on this. But this is fractionally longer. I mean, we're not talking about much, it's only about a 32nd of an inch longer, but it's enough that when you're clamped up on that, that will still pivot on it. So what we're going to do is put that in there, like such. Put a bolt in, a bolt with a, what do they call them here, mushroom cap or something, so that it doesn't stick out much, because we're going to have the spring over the top of it. Now the angle you set this at is, it's nothing fixed. What I always do is I do each one at a time. When I've got the wheels on the bike, I'll actually fasten something to the wall and then fasten it to the bike so the bike is leaning over to where I want it to be when the prop stand is down. Then I make the leg, I make the bracket, and then I offer the bracket up so that everything's touching, and just mark it and then bronze it on. And I always make the leg a little bit longer, and then when it's on I can just cut it to the appropriate length and put a little foot on the end. Now the next thing is to put the spring on, and for that we need to have two little posts. Turn these up in the lathe. It's some 3/8. What I like to do is, rather than just put them straight on the end, I turn it down to a quarter and drill a 1/4 inch hole in, so it'll go in. Does a couple of things. I think it makes it, well, I'm sure it makes it somewhat stronger, but also if I turn this to slightly more than 1/4 of an inch, we again get over the problem of holding things while we bronze them. This would be really difficult to hold, but with a hole that will go in, be nice and stiff, and then we can bronze it on. So we make two of those, one for there and one for up here. Next thing we come to is where to actually put the spring. Now what we want the spring to do is we want it to be at an angle to this, so that when it's up there it's pulling it, but we also want it, when it comes around here, to be at an angle to this. So only at one point will it be in a straight line, and then after that it's off centre that way, and it's off the centre line that way, and it's pulling it tight in. So I'm not even sure what these springs are off. I think they're a Triumph spring, but I like the types with the movable ends, not the one where the final coil is made into a curl there, because it allows it to move more in that respect. So what we need is, as I say, we need it to be about there and about there. It's going to be up on the pins that it's mounted on. So there to there, something like that. That should give us enough of a pull there. The pull here isn't quite as important because of course the weight of the bike will be on it, but we want the pull here to be really strong, because you don't want that flopping around when you're riding, and you certainly don't want it coming down enough to catch on something. So if you have difficulty finding an exactly perfect spot, think in terms of making this the harder pull than this. See here, if we wanted it a long way off, it'd be right out there, and then by the time that goes round, you see, you wouldn't have any pull. Whereas here, it would be perfect if it was there. So we've got to make a compromise. So we're going to put it in like that, drill 2 holes, and then pop the little mounting pins in and bronze them in. So let me find a pen, and we'll mark it and drill some holes. I always put the spring on the outside, partly because it's a lot easier to work on, but also if you have the prop stand on this side, you've got the chain guard here, you're going to have your where's she gone? You're going to have this on here. It's an awful lot of stuff in close proximity, so I put it on the outside. And again, as with everything else, I've done it this way before. I've ridden the bike, the pins don't snap off, this stays in place and nothing gets in the way of your boot. Your boot is right out here, so it's not a problem. So let's mark this where we've decided we want it to be. So we're going to be up a bit to give us that pull, and forward a bit to give us that pull. So I think there is going to be about right. So what I'm going to do is drill this and make the first one, then I can put it on there and get a better idea of where I want it here, because don't forget we want it to be a little under tension. The only place it sort of is at the minimum tension is there when it's in a straight line. So here it's no good marking it to go there and marking it to go there, because then it would just be like that. This is going to have to be further along, so that when we put the spring on, you know, you have that wonderful job of getting springs on. So let me drill a hole and we'll go from there. Alright, there's the first one bronzed in. They've got to be a little high to clear the bolt head there. Also, I don't know if you noticed when I showed you this little thing, it has a recess with an edge to it so that the spring won't pop off. You round the tops off so the spring will go on easily, and then it wants to go into this little recess here. And don't make the recess a curve, because that will let the spring pop off. It's got to have a nice sharp edge to it. And I'm sure you all noticed my deliberate mistake when I said that as this comes around, that's the minimum pull, that of course is the maximum pull. So we're going to go from there. As you can see, we've got some pull there, and you can feel it. Well, you should see it pull, because as I move this, it's going, you see how it's going up that. So we want it to be there, and we're going to need to have it longer than the spring itself. So when that's there, that's where it would go if it was the normal length. So we want to stretch this a little bit, not too much, otherwise we'll never get it on. So we're going to put it down there. So okay, let's go off camera again. Isn't that a good technical phrase there, off camera? Makes it sound as if I know what I'm doing. Whereas those of you who watched the oil tank video will know that I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm going to drill this, pop this other one in, and then that's done. And swinging arm and frame and everything is going to go off to the sandblaster. So here we've got our second hole in, and I thought what I'd do here is just show you why I do the little piece on the bottom. Make the hole slightly smaller, too small even. There it goes. And as I say, nice and solid, so you don't have to worry about while you're bronzing it. Oh, dun, 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 dun. Probably can't see anything now, can you? Now. Bang! There we go. So we'll let this cool down and then we'll put it on the swinging arm and show you how the spring goes. Fingers crossed anyway. So here we go. Got that one on there, that one on here. Got our little, oh, what is the name for that? Isn't it awful getting old? Anyway, whatever they call it. That goes there. Got our bolt in. Put our spring on that end. Now then, there are all sorts of ways of putting springs on. If it's one with a slightly looser coil than this, what you can do is put one end in the vise, bend it over, and then as the coils open up, put washers in. Turn it round, bend it the other way, put washers in there. You can get about, oh, at least a third more length. And then you pop it on, and you use pliers just to pull the washers out, and on it goes. Another idea is to buy or make yourself one of these. This, as you can see, is just a big old screwdriver, T-handle welded on it, and a notch put in. You've got to use a pretty big screwdriver. Screwdrivers are good actually because the steel is good, because obviously if this was relatively soft or small, you just pull the end off, so it's got to be pretty good. And for that reason as well, unless you buy a proper one which is made of exactly the right steel, you've got to make it probably a little bit bigger and more robust. So anyway, you put that on that end, this in this end, and without losing a finger end, we hope, come on you little bugger, try it this way up. We can slip it on a bit easier. Come on! Would you believe it? It's because you're watching. You can of course slip these on sometimes with a screwdriver, but since I got my little special tool out, thought I'd show off. Usually works. There it goes. No, it doesn't. Very near, but no banana. Alright, we'll try it with a screwdriver. You want to use a Phillips screwdriver for this because you're going to use the little slot there to go in there like that. Put it on, put your little slot there. Oh, and there it goes. Now we see, does it work? That should hold that up there. That holds that there. Look at that, got it right. What I normally do is, you could get very clever I suppose, but I get some nice rubber tubing that fits that, split it and glue it on there just where it's going to come up and hit that. So there we go. As you can see, there's plenty of space here for it to clear the bolt head. All nicely done. So that's it for this little fella. Say next thing for that and the rest of the frame is sandblasting. Next thing you should see is me rebuilding the engine.